Hi there. Thank you for tuning into this year's volunteer training in preparation for the BSA's 2024 Architect Classroom Visit. My name is Taylor Johnson, Design Education and Engagement Manager here at the BSA, and today I'll be sharing a little bit about the program's background as well as doing a short demonstration to prepare you for your visit. The BSA's kindergarten program began during the 2017-2018 school year as a partnership between the BSA, Boston Public Schools, and Cambridge Public Schools. By working closely with the early childhood departments at each district, we were able to bring the program to more classrooms each year since then and integrate the lesson on architecture and the architect visit into the already existing 10-week-long construction unit that local classrooms take part in. Since we launched in 2018, each year has had different needs and desires, and the program has taken many shapes from virtual, at home, and hybrid visits during the COVID-19 pandemic to now where we are today, back to in-person classroom visits and learning. With each year, we've scaled the program and grown momentum with both architects and teachers alike, and are so glad to see the support of this program grow over time. What we've been able to do over the years relies and is centered around volunteers like you and your time and effort bringing the lesson on architecture to life. Your participation and willingness to take part and evolve with this program each year has been key to its success. Bringing architecture into the classroom and hearing directly from an architect or designer has shown to be incredibly beneficial to students' understanding of this topic and is also key to building awareness of the built world from an early age. As you can see here, the program has grown and evolved, so much so that we're off the page for the last year in 2023, as we piloted a new teacher-guided curriculum and made materials available to any of the 200 plus BPS and CPS classrooms, in addition to those served by the architect classroom visits. This year, as most Cambridge public schools have now adopted the similar construction unit as Boston Public Schools, we'll now have 11 out of the 12 elementary schools participating, and from that, 26 classrooms reached. For volunteers who opted to participate in the Boston Public Schools, our Boston project, they'll be visiting over 35 classrooms. And although not pictured here, the teacher guide from last year will be revised this year with an aim to permanently embed it into the curriculum in the unit in construction for teachers and classrooms interested in learning on their own time, their own pace, and sharing the lesson on architecture with a larger audience. To prepare for the classroom visit, I ask that you review the document shared in the Dropbox through email. This includes the lesson plan, presentation script, and material checklist. The lesson plan especially will be your guide to prepare for the classroom visit. To give you an overview, the classroom visit is broken into 3 sections: an interactive presentation, a hands-on design activity, and a student share-out. You will be presenting at the front of the class, then demonstrating the hands-on activity and delivering it with the help from your classroom teacher. To begin the visit, you will share the presentation with the class, guiding students through building types and building shapes. The setup and technology available at each classroom varies by classroom, but you will have either a projector, a screen, or a monitor to show your projected slides. It's also helpful to bring your laptop if you have one, unless the teacher is already providing one. During the presentation, you will help students learn about building types categorized by place: places to live, places to work, play, etc. As you work through each place, listening to students' answers, you will compile a large list, which will help with the hands-on activity. To prepare for the visit, cut out paper shapes using the provided materials and the material checklist. These materials are available for pickup at the BSA Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. During the hands-on activity, each student will use the paper shapes to create a building type of their choice. Glued together, the big and small shapes become the front building facade with doors, windows, and other details. The building they choose to create can come from the list of building types that are generated during the presentation, and teachers can assist in making that list as well as matching students with building types. Once the students have glued down their shapes on their building, invite them back to the front of the room on the carpet, and one by one, students will share what their building is and who uses it. The collection of buildings will grow, forming a neighborhood street where people can live, work, and play. As you'll see on the schedule, the architect visit is part of a larger effort in kindergarten to learn about architecture, design, and construction. Many of the classrooms participating this year will continue on to an extension project named Our Cambridge, which each classroom responds to the mayor's prompt. Because Cambridge Public Schools also uses Boston Public Schools curriculum, those who are volunteering in Boston Public Schools will do a very similar project as the Our Boston Extension project. Our Cambridge and Our Boston both begin with a design challenge from the mayor of the respective city. This started with Boston's Mayor Walsh and then now to Mayor Wu, as well as Cambridge's Mayor Siddiqui and now Mayor Simmons. We're currently awaiting the 2024 letters, but they will follow a similar format as this letter from 2023. Students brainstorm ideas as a class and respond to the design challenge by designing a 3-foot by 4-foot model built of recycled materials. Cambridge Public School classroom models will also be on display in early April in Cambridge City Hall, and Boston Public School classroom models will be on display in mid-May in partnership with the BSA and the City of Boston. If you're interested in continuing a relationship with the classroom beyond your initial visit, you're more than welcome to make an additional visit to help the classroom with their Our Cambridge project as much as schedules allow. Cambridge has a renewed interest in the project this year, and if your capacity allows and your interested teacher is as well, then go for it. Past volunteers have returned to brainstorm ideas, and some have also helped to build the model with the students and teacher. These are just a few of the models we've seen over the years, taking shape from a building to a trash eating robot to what's shown here, which is a mobile bus of toys for kids that moves around the city. You can use this architect checklist as your main guide for the visit. There's also a teacher-guided checklist included in case you want to understand the teacher's role of the visit as well. The teacher gets a copy of this entire document and they're in the know. All volunteers are paired with a classroom teacher through Airtable. If you haven't done so already, introduce yourself through Airtable and schedule a time to meet with your teachers. We also recommend a quick introductory call with your teacher to go over expectations and format, especially as many new teachers have joined the program this year. You will see the classroom visit detailed in the full lesson plan, but also the script takes you through each slide of the presentation. Both this document and the PowerPoint also have matching text formats noting script suggestions, slide topics, images shown, and activity prompts. To prepare for the presentation, you may want to print this document out, mark it up with your own notes, and there's a few different keys. These circles mark sections of the presentation that you tend to before the visit. Others are suggested prompts that you might want to discuss with the teacher on the introductory call. Others are ways you can customize pieces of the presentation if you so choose. Many sections will have you ask students to engage with the presentation marked in the regular text. This and more is noted in the lesson plan for you to discuss with the teacher about how to approach the visit. The script will also mark activities, ways to engage the students, but these are just suggestions. Rehearsing this and adding your own style to it will make your presentation as fun as it can be. Now that we've walked through the lesson plan, let's jump into the presentation. As you enter the classroom, the teacher will have the class set up with a projector, TV monitor, or similar. You can present the following slides, and this slide deck will introduce students to building types, as we mentioned before, which are categorized here as places, and then break down building facades into simple shapes. So let's go through the slides together now. If you're a returning volunteer who has presented this many times before, feel free to skip this section. But for new volunteers or those that want a primer, let's begin. You can introduce yourself, what you do, and where you work. Ask students what they think you'll be doing together during your visit. You can also ask them about what they're learning and in the unit in construction as well. You can say something like, I hear you are all studying construction, how things are built and how they're designed. As an architect, I think about those things too, and I'm going to share how architects work together with our communities to make Cambridge a better place. We are going to look at how buildings come together to make a city, and then each of you will design your own building. So as I'm walking through these slides, I'll be talking just as the script allows you to talk during the presentation. So who knows where this is? People can shout out, it might be Cambridge, it might be Boston, and you can say that this is an aerial view, meaning it's taken from above, from an airplane or a helicopter, and it shows Cambridge from above. And this is another view of Cambridge. This is a map of Cambridge and its many neighborhoods. You can mention that Cambridge is a funny shape and cities grow over time with neighborhoods that are added and edges of the water that were filled in to make more land. And the city of Cambridge has been this shape for over 100 years. Before presenting, you can drag a map marker onto the slide to show locations of the school that you're visiting. If you live and work within the city limits, you're welcome to show that in the neighborhood as well. And you can mark any projects or things. There's a couple different keys on the left-hand side in the PowerPoint that you can drag and drop. So as you're talking over this map, you can say, in this map of Cambridge, here's your school. I also work over here, I live over here, and some of the projects I designed are here, here, and here. Now on to what architects do and talking about who architects are. Architects are part of a team that built our city. Do architects work all by themselves? Who do they work with? And you can encourage students to shout out their answers. Answers may vary. You can list any that are missing from the list that is suggested in the script. We suggest clients, engineers, landscape architects, urban planners, contractors, and of course, many more. Together, we create places and spaces for people to do what they need to do every day. This is the Rose Kennedy Greenway in downtown Boston. People play, walk, and relax here. And you can ask students what are some of the things they need to do every day. Encourage them to shout out their answers. They might say, play, learn, go to the store, help in the kitchen, watch TV or an iPad, eat dinner, anything goes. Let them know that that's a great list of all the things that people do during the day, and that you're going to look at buildings around the Boston area that show places where people live, learn, shop, gather, care, and go. These places are technically building types, and these little drawings show each one, and as we go, you'll see them as a key on the top corner of each slide. In this section, we describe building types in terms of activity rather than zoning for this age group, and you can elicit a long list of all of these types of buildings in the city as you go from slide to slide. As we've said in the last couple of slides, you can encourage students to call out. This is supposed to be very interactive, and they can list as many buildings and types that they can think of. If you need it, the teacher is also there to capture the list as it's being generated, which will be used for the hands-on activity. So let's start with places we live. It's one of the most important places because everyone needs a place to live. There are many different types of places to live in our city, and you can ask the students, what are some places to live? They'll call out a variety of different responses. There's also some responses in the script if you need to call some of those out. And you can ask students what they see. The images in each category are really just meant to spark ideas. As you click through, have the students recognize the different building types and share their ideas about them. So people live in apartment buildings of all shapes and sizes. They also live in other different homes. If students haven't said these already, you can say nursing homes, homeless shelters, assisted living facilities, all different places to live. We also need places to learn. So what are some places to learn? You can ask them what they see here. They may or may not recognize some of these buildings. Students might say schools, libraries, museums, parks, zoos. And before presenting, if you can find a photo of the school that you're visiting, feel free to edit it right over this image. Where do you and your family shop? You can encourage students to shout out those responses. Students' answers might include grocery stores, markets, farmers markets, toy stores, bookstores, clothing stores. And then switching to places of care, there's places that we care for one another. So what places can the students think of? And what do they see here? This is a firehouse and a hospital. You can ask them what are the other places that people take care of one another. Could be nursing homes, health clinics, senior centers, community centers, might be even their home if they have a grandmother or grandfather living with them. And what are some places to gather? There are all different places where we gather, where communities come together to either work together, worship together, celebrate together. There's many different examples of gathering. So this is a very broad topic. There's the Massachusetts State House on the right, where people gather to share ideas, and then the First Church of Roxbury on the left, where people gather to worship together. What other places do people gather? They might say community centers, churches, government buildings, anything else you can think of, add that in there. There are also many places to work, and nowadays, many people work from home, or a lot of untraditional places that they didn't work pre-pandemic. People go lots of different places for work. You can ask students where their family and people that they know go to work. They might say office buildings, bus stations, factories, restaurants, stores, schools, you name it, it will probably be there on that list. And there's lots of places to play. It's probably the most fun category. So do only children like to play? Who likes to play? And really, what is play? So you can ask them, what places do people like to play? It could be playgrounds, but it could also be parks, water fountains, pools, theaters, places where people can have fun and gather throughout the city. And lastly, this isn't quite a place, but it's talking about transit. So people get around town in many different ways. You can ask them how they get around the city, encourage them to shout out their responses. They might say the train, the bus, a car, a taxi or an Uber, bike, scooter, on foot. And then wrapping up places, you can say architects or designers like me design all different types of buildings around the city. These buildings, along with streets, parks, and everything else, help to make up cities that we all live, learn, and play in. As I mentioned before, we start out with places, but then we move to breaking down buildings by shape. So this is where we begin that section. So all buildings, including the one we saw today, are made up of shapes. This building is the Massachusetts State House near the Boston Common. You can say to the students that it's made up of a lot of shapes and prompt them that if they see any, to shout it out. You can start them off by saying you see a large triangle. We see a lot of triangles on buildings because they are the strongest shape. When roofs have a triangular shape, they help rain and snow fall off the building, and architects call this particular triangle a pediment. There are rectangles of lots of different sizes here too. This building has 3 big rectangles, as well as lots of smaller rectangles too. These squares and rectangles are windows and doors that look out onto the park in the Boston Common. These rectangles, which are columns, you can let them know that these are actually 3-dimensional and that architects call these columns. You can also, there's an activity prompt here, so you can have students stand up and put their hands over their head in their chairs and make a column with their bodies. And if they do that, you can talk to them while they're doing it. So saying columns hold up a lot of weight. When you're putting your hands straight up in the air like a column, do they get tired? Of course they do. Could you be a column for 250 years? That would be a lot of hard work to stay like this for that long. They might be bouncing around the carpet or classroom at that point in time, and then you can ask them to sit back down, put their arms back down. Moving on to the next shape, you can see circles. The circles are windows or decorations on the front of the building. I also see half circles, which are called semicircles, and you can let them know that architects call these arches. Another activity prompt, if your classroom allows, ask students to pair up with the neighbor next to them, make an arch by standing together with their hands connected. If this is not feasible for the classroom, just note the illustrated people and skip forward. If they do the prompt, you can say that just like the people on the screen, you can press your hands together with your partner's hands and lean in, and you can ask them if they feel pressure in their arms or their shoulders or their legs or the feet, and talk about that is gravity moving, and that arches, like the semicircles that they see here, carry a lot of the building's weight and can be very tiring. This is one big circle at the top of the building too. This circle is 3 dimensions and it's called a sphere, and architects call this a dome. You can ask students to point to the dome on their body. They'll point to their head. So asking, do you have a dome on your body? Our head acts like a dome and it protects everything that's inside. We saw all of these sorts of shapes, from triangles and rectangles, circles and squares, and when we put these shapes together, they become a building. So now we will get to design a building for Cambridge made up of the shapes we just saw. Today, we've come up with a long list of buildings to live in, to work in, to learn in, and to play. And next, we're going to make a neighborhood street where we have people and places to live, work, shop, and play. So what places are important for us to have in our neighborhood? You can call out a few of the examples below, as well as some that were created from the list. Might be an apartment building for people to live in, a shop for people to get groceries, a temple for people to gather. And each of the students will design a building to add to the neighborhood. Ask students what they will design to make Cambridge a better place, and then you can shift and begin the hands-on activity. Depending on your preference and the classroom interest, there's a few options for you to begin the hands-on activity here. You can choose to either continue presenting slides to show the following building shape examples. You can edit the slides with your own paper building, which is the ambitious option, or you can end the presentation here and show your own paper building example to the class before diving in. If you decide, you can keep sharing these slides to prepare students for the hands-on activity. Your teacher will hand out a big building shape to each one of the students to start designing the building. And note that there are 2 types, one with a pointy roof, which architects call a gabled roof, or a flat rectangular. Then you'll glue shapes to make the building of your choice. You can say that you use these shapes or show the ones that you have. For this example, we'll say this is a museum. It's a fun place for people to play and see art. And you can see that the shapes were used to create the unique doors and windows. These are some other examples too, made from the shapes that are coming from the shape template. So there might be a shop, a firehouse, or an apartment building. Possibilities are endless. Now for the hands-on activity. There will be those 3 shape templates that you'll pick up at the BSA and prepare for your visit. You'll prep these by cutting and sorting the shapes, and if you have time and energy, you can make that quick paper building example to show to the class. There are 2 building facade shape options for you to choose from, and a template with those smaller assorted shapes to glue on as building details and building elements. Before the students choose their building type and shape, you'll demonstrate the activity with your example building and shapes. You can show the students that there are 2 building options and that the rectangular one can be the horizontal version lying flat or vertical standing up tall. You can show the gabled roof option 2 and explain it as a rectangle with a triangle on top. To get some ideas, I'll run through a building example right now. For my example, I chose a gable roof and we'll stand it vertically to make a firehouse. I'll add some doors, so these big doors for the trucks to go through, some windows on the second floor. And when you show your example to the students, you can point out a few reasons why you added the elements. So for example, here, the firefighters work on the second floor and sleep upstairs, so it might be good to have some daylight in there. A circle for a big clock, and long rectangular strips for the roof. If there is time during the visit, you can draw in a few details once the key doors and windows are added. This is definitely not necessary, but if there's time and if there's markers available, go ahead. Once students have had time to work on their buildings, gluing it all together, it's time to share and build the street together. The teacher will assemble the students and invite them to share their buildings. As each student shares, they will start to build the street using space along the paper laid out on the floor or the wall. You can ask each student about their building and where they want to place it on the street. And as you start adding the buildings one by one, just help narrate what's happening. Such as here, if you place a firehouse first, then there might be a small store next door for people to shop and a temple for people to gather. There'll be a wide range of buildings that the students choose from that list earlier in the presentation. Next to the temple, we'll add the art museum and the apartment building for people to live. And as the street fills out, we'll add one more building, a hospital for people to be taken care of. Now that we have a full street showing the variety of building types, we can talk about if maybe we want to move them around. Perhaps the hospital is too noisy and should be on the edge of the street, and the apartment building could move to a quieter area. And the temple might also want to move far from the noise and the busyness of the shop, museum, and hospital to a quiet part of the neighborhood where people can hear their own thoughts. Once the class is filled up the street with the students' buildings, you can conclude the visit and ask some final questions to the students. Looking at their street can ask them if there's people living in the neighborhood, if they have everything that they need, and if there's anything else that could be added to the neighborhood street to make it a bit better. Some examples of what these student buildings might look like up here. We have a karate building, some others. We're always looking for great quality photos. So if you do have photos that you take during the classroom visit and the teacher is okay with sharing them, please do share with us here at the BSA. And here's the end result, what a street might look like of all these different student buildings. Remember, please complete the query if you haven't done so already. Pick up and prep the paper materials and review the documents in the Dropbox, especially the lesson plan. As you read through the emails sent and the Dropbox documents, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me at tjohnson@architects.org. Thank you for tuning into this training and reviewing the classroom visit with me. Have a really great time and report back on how your classroom visit went. We hope it goes well. We thank you again for volunteering and have a great rest of your day.